It has been a rough few years for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, to say the least. As somebody who has been a big fan of Marvel films my entire life, even I personally have grown a little disinterested in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, really since around No Way Home. So with that being said, Deadpool and Wolverine is a film that I desperately wanted to be good because I want to be excited about Marvel films again. Unfortunately, the film is hitting theaters this weekend. A lot of you are going to be seeing it for the first time. I saw it for the first time last night, and I have many thoughts. So, good news. I really loved it. It's not perfect. It does have some shortcomings and some flaws, but we're going to get into that in a little bit. First, I want to talk about what I loved about it. As excited as I was for this film and have been since it was announced, there were a couple glaring concerns that I think many of you probably had going into it. The first being, how are they going to bring back Hugh Jackman's Wolverine and make it feel organic? Logan was such a masterpiece, and it was such an epic conclusion to a character that we all grew to know and love over the course of 17 years. And when we found out that Hugh Jackman was going to be returning in the role in the MCU, you know, I was excited, of course. You get more Hugh Jackman Wolverine, but at the same time, in the back of my mind, I'm like, how are we going to make that work and make it feel right? You know, Logan was so perfect, and it has such a special place in my heart and all of your hearts. How do you do this without tainting that? You know, bringing Hugh Jackman's Wolverine back is very different than bringing back, say, Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, because neither one of those characters, Tobey or Andrew Spider-Man, had a conclusion to their character arc. There was no send-off. You ended with Spider-Man 3 and you ended with Amazing Spider-Man 2. There was no Logan-esque goodbye to those characters. So you kind of left it open for interpretation. You didn't have to walk on eggshells as much because there was never any closure with them. You just say, hey, they're from the multiverse. And everybody's cool with it. But with this, you got to be really careful. Because you had something really good. You ended it really well. So to bring him back in the MCU in a Deadpool film, nonetheless, that's a huge task. And I am happy to say, after seeing the film, I think they did a pretty good job. Of course, I won't be spoiling anything in this video. This will be completely spoiler-free. But the film basically starts out with kind of addressing the whole Logan thing. And I am happy to say, I guess this is kind of a spoiler, but not really. They don't really do anything to discredit Logan or change anything that happened in Logan. Logan is Logan, and nothing they did in this film changes that. So that was awesome. Now, the other major concern that I had going into this film was, are they going to let Deadpool be Deadpool? Are they going to let Ryan Reynolds be Ryan Reynolds? This is Disney. You know, they do like to kind of water stuff down, make it, you know, family friendly, all that stuff, which is fine in the right setting. But with Deadpool, there's a couple comic book characters, Marvel characters, that you're doing a disservice when you water down. Two that come to mind are Punisher and Deadpool. Both of those are characters that kind of, their whole identity is violence. It's being unhinged. And so when Disney acquired Fox and we found out Deadpool was going to continue, that was the major question in mind. You know, are they going to allow this to be what it needs to be? And to my surprise, this might be the most unhinged Deadpool film of the entire trilogy. I was shocked. I was in awe of the stuff that was coming out of Ryan Reynolds' mouth throughout this film. It was crazy, bro. They really just brought Ryan Reynolds on and said, hey, man, do what you did previously, but you can just go crazy with it. Show them that we mean business. Mickey Mouse is here to fuck, bro. Like, dude, it was crazy. They just let him go do his thing, and I think that's awesome. You know, it's very encouraging going forward with this film out there now. You know, you got Punisher coming, you got Daredevil coming, so I don't think we need to question anymore whether or not Disney is going to allow this style of film to exist within the MCU, because they have shown, this film proved without a shadow of a doubt, they are completely okay with mature content on their platforms. So Big plus there for Marvel. But yeah, the movie starts out great. It kind of gets into it, explaining, you know, what the plot's going to be, where we're headed, how we're going to unite these two characters together in a respectful way to Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. And so you get into that probably towards the end of the first act. The two, you know, they're together now. And immediately, man, you know, we always knew Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman were, you know, had a lot of chemistry. It'd be really cool to see them on screen together in a proper way, not an X-Men Origins way. But, you know, immediately it's like yin and yang. It's two peas in a pod. It's like peanut butter and jelly. These two together are so outstanding. The chemistry is off the charts. The way they feed off of each other, the effortless comedy, dude, it was chef's kiss, amazing. And it goes on throughout the entire film. There's never, as far as Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds, Wolverine and Deadpool, them together doing their thing, I don't think the film ever falls off. It never dips in any way. That is by far the high point. That even if the plot is, and I'll get into this in a little bit, even if the plot is a little, not mediocre, but a little just predictable, I guess would be the word, a little cliche for a comic book film. Even if the plot is a little bit lacking here and there, just those two together and their chemistry, it can carry the worst of plots, man. They could have the worst plot in the world, and those two together, they just make it work. That's what we're all here for. We're here to see Deadpool and Wolverine, and they knocked it out of the park, man. And my next point, the freaking cameos, dude. Again, I'm not going to spoil anything. I would never want to spoil some of these cameos for anybody. But I am honestly so impressed that they were able to keep all of this under wraps in today's, you know, era of social media. You know, Marvel films, you never get a Marvel film now like this where everything is not spoiled a few weeks into production, it seems. It's just, you got all these set photos all the time. They're always spoiling everything. You got to stay off social media like 2 weeks before the movie drops. But this time, these cameos, when I say every single one, I don't know how many there are. There's several. There was not a single one where I did not audibly gasp. I'm not joking. I was like, what is happening? This is, they're doing this? And, well, I take that back. There was one, X-23, Laura. But we all knew, that's not a spoiler. We all knew that. She was in the trailer. So that was the only one that didn't surprise me. And we already knew about that one. So if that tells you anything, it's a freaking cameo fest, but it's a tasteful cameo fest. It's not a cameo fest in a way where it feels as though it's nothing but fan service. These are tasteful cameos. And I think they're not there. You know, that was one of my problems with Multiverse of Madness. You had the John Krasinski, Reed Richards, you had Captain Carter and these characters, but it felt like they were only there to service the fans and not the plot. They were just there. Oh, cameo. Yeah, cool. These cameos service the plot. And I think that's really, really important with these films, especially now that we are in the multiverse saga, so to speak. You really want to be careful with how you do this because it can turn into, you know, just getting these actors to come and shoot these cameos and it's not really contributing anything. It's just, you know, to service fans on opening night. Sure, it helps the theater experience on those Thursday, Friday night openings, but what does it do for the film, you know, a year from now, 6 months from now, when you're going to rewatch it? Are you going to rewatch it 6 months from now and say, that wasn't really that great. We were just hyped about the cameos, right? And I don't feel like that's the case here, man. I feel like every cameo in the movie, it contributed to the story in some type of way. A lot of the time it was more comedic than anything. It kind of fed into the comedy of the film. But nonetheless, I thought it was really, really tasteful. Now, that's kind of all the positive stuff I have to say. I really loved it. Best Marvel film I've seen since No Way Home, probably. I do think it's a little better than No Way Home, but I don't know. It's tough. It's kind of that caliber of film to me. I don't think it's better than Endgame or anything like that. I've seen some people say like best Marvel movie ever. I wouldn't go that far. But I think it's awesome. It's really, really good. It's definitely a step in the right direction. Huge W, a much needed W by Marvel Studios. But I do have a couple cons, some little nitpicks that I feel like were lacking. The first of which, the main thing that I would say wasn't great is I think there was some pacing stuff going on here and there throughout. From the second Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds characters are joined together and you're kind of jumping into what the main plot line of the film is going to be, there's some like real, we're going fast, we're going slow, we're going fast, we're moving forward, we're going back, we're moving. It's just kind of wonky, the pacing. It seems like there would be these long periods of dialogue, which is fine. And then it would just jump forward in the plot really fast afterwards. They'd spend a lot of time on one particular little scene with some dialogue. And then it's like all of a sudden, bam, we're in a completely new area where there was no kind of showing how we got here type thing. I just felt like the movie really would have benefited from being a little bit longer and letting this plot kind of marinate more, let it bake, let the fans kind of go on this journey and not feel like they're being rushed through this journey, because the movie's only 2 hours and 7 minutes. I know that's pretty typical for a Marvel film. I really wish it wasn't. I'm not saying this has to be Snyder cut Justice League or anything like that. Definitely doesn't need to be 3-4 hour movie, but like 2.5 hours, I feel, you know, maybe not even that, maybe another 15-20 minutes would have been more than enough to kind of let this plot play out a little bit more, give a little more depth to your main antagonist. It really would have benefited from that. The other thing, and I guess this is really just kind of an expansion on my main complaint, the comedy, though I think the comedy is amazing. Don't get me wrong. This is Deadpool at his finest now. Don't get my words twisted. This is Deadpool at his finest. They let him do his thing. It's hilarious. I mean, I was belly laughing the entire time. So don't get it twisted. I thought it was hilarious, but I feel like sometimes the movie could have benefited from maybe just cutting back just a little bit and let Ryan Reynolds maybe not ramble as long as he did in some scenes. When you see the movie, you'll know what I'm saying. It just felt like you were at certain important points of the plot where it didn't quite feel appropriate for him to just burst out in Deadpool fashion, which I guess that is kind of the point. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that was their goal. I don't know. I'm just saying sometimes the comedy was a little bit overbearing. Not that it wasn't funny, but they could have benefited from better comedic timing. That's the word I'm looking for, comedic timing. The comedic timing was off here and there. And then my final, and this would be my only major complaint, I didn't care for the antagonist all that much. I don't really feel like the movie's purpose was to have some big, intimidating main antagonist. Obviously, we're all there for Deadpool and Wolverine and multiverse shit, right? That's why we're all here. That's what we're watching the movie for. But the antagonist, she wasn't very interesting, to say the least. Again, I'm not going to spoil anything at all whatsoever, but just know the main antagonist, her purpose, right? And who she is, they kind of just ran through it, when in reality, the concept behind her was really interesting. And I think it would have benefited from maybe expanding a little more and giving her a little more, letting you see into that backstory a little bit more, make you care more about her and her motives. But because the runtime was cut so short, I feel there wasn't a whole lot of time for them to expand on her. And it just kind of resulted in this really cliche main comic book antagonist. You know, I'm going to be real. Nobody's going to be talking about her 4 years from now. We'll be talking about Deadpool and Wolverine 4 years from now still, I'm sure, even though I'm sure it'll go through its little 6 months from now, that trend will come up where we all turn on it and say, it wasn't that good, like No Way Home. But personally, I think 4 or 5 years from now, we're still going to be saying this was a good film. We'll still be talking about Deadpool and Wolverine, but we won't be talking about the antagonist. A lot of us probably won't remember her name. Just forewarning you, don't go into this thinking you're going to get some freaking Thanos, Winter Soldier, Red Skull type antagonist, because you're not. She's very forgettable. But other than that, I'm happy to say that's really my only major complaints about the movie. I thought it was very good. Like I said, much needed W by Marvel Studios. They needed this bad. They needed this movie to be a success. It's already, as I'm recording this, I think it's already made over 100 million, which is, I mean, that's just awesome. It's freaking Friday, man. It's not that's after the Thursday night showing. So they needed this bad. The MCU has been on such a decline since Endgame. And I hate that because, God, I want them to be great so bad. I just feel like they kind of lost the plot a little bit, but this is definitely a step in the right direction for them. I mean, literally, it being their opening night, it felt like the glory days again. It really did. It felt like that classic opening Marvel night. You know, that theater experience, everybody's hype. I had the Wolverine popcorn bucket. I spent $56 on a Wolverine popcorn bucket and a light up Deadpool cup. And it was the happiest $56 I've ever spent. It felt really good to be back in that seat and feel like it did during the Infinity Saga. It finally feels like we can be somewhat excited about where they're headed. So in conclusion, Deadpool and Wolverine is a very good film, a flawed film, but a very good film, a step in the right direction, a much needed W for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, for Marvel Studios, for Kevin Feige and his job. And I am going to give Deadpool and Wolverine a Rob rating of 8.5 out of 10. Now, many of you are like, wow, that seems kind of low. I don't think it is. I'm giving it that because I'm factoring in the cameo fog dissipating from my brain, like No Way Home. If you were to ask me on opening night what I would rate No Way Home, it would have been 10 out of 10 immediately because, dude, I was hyped. And it's the same thing last night leaving the theater. You know, if you asked me last night, probably would have said a 10 out of 10, but I slept on it. And now that I've had kind of time to process it and kind of, you know, let that hype of all the cameos, I call it cameo fog, let that kind of clear out a little bit so you can kind of see it for what it is. I think it evens out to around an 8.5, which is around where I would give No Way Home. Infinity War would be like a 9.5. Endgame would be like a 9. So yeah, I mean, this is a heavy hitter, man. This is a good Marvel film. This is like a top 5 to 8 MCU movie. We have never been more back. If you enjoyed this little review, be sure to drop a like for me, subscribe on this channel. I know most of you know me for my gaming content. Maybe this is the first time you're seeing me at all. I don't know. Hi, I'm Rob. Comic book entertainment content, something I've really been interested in for a long time, just never really kind of took the leap. I'm always so busy with gaming stuff, but I can't promise I'm going to be uploading on this channel a ton, but who knows? I mean, maybe if this video does well, it'll kind of encourage me a little bit to do it more often. I do have some ideas I want to practice on this channel. Somebody on Twitter actually suggested to do an X-Men fan cast, MCU X-Men fan cast video on this channel, and I like that. So I might cook that. Who knows? Drop a like if you want to see that, okay? Drop me a comment. Let me know you're here, all right? All right. Yeah, go see Deadpool and Wolverine. It's good. ROBMOB forever.